So who do you think, what racial group do you think represents those purple ones? Anybody? Yeah. Caucasians. Now I know that white people have huge numbers, but, you know, are they writing in that much greater proportion than people of color?
No.
Probably not, no. I think a lot of people of color write. And so then we start asking ourselves, well, why is this? Why does the nation not publish the voices of people of color? Well, I don't have the answer, but it's worth recognizing and talking about. I've heard from people of color say they've submitted to places like this and they're told, oh, this is a great piece, but maybe you should publish it where people who will be interested in it will read it. You know, like go to Color Lines or go to The Root, meaning publish it where black people read or publish it where brown people read. And what does that do to the rest of the world? It keeps it, the universal voices white. And what do we call that when we tell people of color to go publish in their little niches that don't have as much widespread availability? We call that ghettoization. Or at least I do. So that's a problem in and of itself. In terms of how to begin addressing these disparities and interrogating underlying biases that work in our own reading selections and assignments, I call on one of my heroes who I met as an undergrad in the library upon picking up a really huge book. I was like, what is that big ass book? It's called The Price of the Ticket. It's a book of essays, and it floored me. The voice was so strong, so powerful, so articulate, so many amazing ideas, and anger too, which struck me as powerful because it was very tempered anger. And it was the writer and activist James Baldwin's book, The Price of the Ticket. Anyway, I want to do a quote from him as soon as I take my coat off, because I feel like I'm having hot flashes. And I could be, I'm 44 now. But y'all didn't know that, did you? My students are here. All right, so this is a quote by James Baldwin, and I think it's really important because it's about bridging the chasms, I guess, between us, or the ones that we feel exist, even though we're all human and we all have, you know, a lot of human needs. Nonetheless, it's very hard to hear each other when we other each other, and Baldwin is very good at saying what needed to be done. So this is from a book of his called The Fire Next Time. If we, and now I mean the relatively conscious whites and the relatively conscious blacks, who must, like lovers, insist on or create the consciousness of the others, do not falter in our duty now, we may be able, handful that we are, to end the racial nightmare and achieve our country and change the history of the world. So I take 2 points from Baldwin's quote. First, we need to locate and work with the willing men and women. Don't expend your energy on what I call trolls or derailers who are just completely resistant to hearing you at all. You will waste your time, you will not be effective, and even if you change that person's mind, it might take years for you to hear about it, and you've done not a lot. It's more important to locate the people who are, in my experience, oh, that's shocking, but I don't know what to do. That willingness is what I hear. The people who go, I don't know what to do. And then you say, would you like to do something? Those are the people you want to talk to. To locate the willing men and women, create cross-gender and race alliances who actively seek to change the literary landscape, not simply for gender imbalances, but for all the work that has been neglected or marginalized. And second, one of the primary ways of doing that work is to raise awareness, or as Baldwin puts it, create consciousness. In short, VIDA has initiated a movement that for now is a call for awareness of publishing and teaching practices. We know that no movement is successful without the active participation of those least harmed by repressive practices. So just, for example, just as attitudes towards marriage equality have been changing rapidly over the last few years, largely due to heterosexuals knowing someone who is gay, So too can we appeal to our male counterparts and white people to become advocates for gender and race parity in publishing. Thus, raising awareness and taking steps to achieve parity require the involvement of publishers and editors, educators, reviewers, and writers, and readers. You know, where you put your money is really important. Are you just buying a bunch of books because, you know, it's the popular thing to do? You read a review. Ask yourself, why is that the only book being reviewed? You know? What pops to mind is that one with the S&M lady person with the movie. Yeah, the 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, we've got to read that. It's all about bondage. Don't spend your money on that. Spend your money on something more exciting. I can give you some good adventures if you want some recommendations. So let's see, one thing we know, this is the part where I've highlighted what I wanted to read, but it's very light, so pardon me. So one thing we know, writers, especially fiction writers, often resist the idea that they can't write a true character that is not somehow alone with themselves. What they're really arguing is that identity is not biologically rooted, and that experience is not solely dependent on the sociological traits assigned to us from birth. That also empathy is a way in, and that their own experience might permit another way in, and that it overlaps with others' experience. Anyway, this is a long way to talk about stereotype a little bit. Or as, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Chimamanda Adichie put it in her TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, quote, "The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is that they are not untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story." So the problem enters when books on certain subjects and written in certain styles, often characterized as masculine, muscular, end up being representative of all good writing. So the good writing is the adventure stories and the public things, stories that are typically white male heterosexual experiences, and they're read universally. Of course, what gets edged out, no matter how gently and slowly, is simultaneously devalued, or as we say, marginalized to backshelf invisibility, are the minority writers or the blank writers, the blank literature, African American literature, women's literature. They even tried to do that a few years ago on, 2 years ago on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is vastly edited by men, and some of the male editors decided to take the section on novelists and take the women novelists out and create a separate section called women novelists. So you have novelists, and then you have women novelists. And luckily a lot of the people fought this, and that got, stopped. But it was going in that direction. If people hadn't spoken up, we would have had novelists and women novelists. Case in point. So, of course, men can write like women and women can write like men. That's what empathy is about. And of course, one can exert a great amount of effort to empathize and write a character very unlike him or herself. This focus on identity and who can perform it is misleading. The divisions are false and must be repeated to be reinforced and maintained. The unspoken prescriptives in the publishing world may contribute immensely to this problem. So, I want to skip some of this because I'm not sure how long I've been going on. So what are some feasible measures to address? Where do these prescriptives get played out? Do we see this on our own syllabi? We can also ask what can be done to increase the profile of books published by female writers, LGBTQ writers, writers of color on the larger literary landscape. Again, where do you put your money? Who are you promoting? What books are you actually reading and talking about? That all matters. So I'm just skipping ahead. VIDA has not conducted a study on my speculations, but I'll state some anyway. I think when we see a real downturn in this stuff, when the economy is in crisis, which it has been and keeps kind of up and down going, but when the pendulum swings to the conservative side, scarcity of resources creates fear, and the isms tend to become more prominent, including sexism and racism. And being aware of even just the economic climate right now, because there is money in publishing, there is money in teaching, there is money in making a textbook. Who you put in your textbook matters. Some professors on this campus have textbooks. Look and see what they put in the table of contents. It's really important. I'll give you an example of something I do in my own classroom just to make my own students a little bit aware of how these biases work. And this is a gendered example, or an example of gender bias. I like to play a trick on my poetry students sometimes, and I haven't done that did I do this semester yet? I can't remember. Just to reveal how arbitrary and misleading the split between public and political and private and domestic is. Now we all know that the public and political tends to be the masculine or male driven. I mean, it's why we have what? I don't know how many 11 senators right now out of 100 who are women. And then women are relegated to, that's why there's a lot of resistance to women being in the workforce and making as much money as men, because we are supposed to be at home and caregivers and stuff. So anyway, I assigned a choice of writing an apostrophe poem to either the president or a mother figure for my students. So when they write to the president, they tend to touch on topics like what they want to address, like global warming and war, police brutality, legal issues like marriage and rape laws in the military. And with the mother figure, they tend to address things like their future plans, having children, potential life goals, relationship issues, navigating relationships and family issues, that sort of thing. So the trick I play on them is I have them write an apostrophe poem, which is basically talking to the president or their mother, and then they tend to write on these issues. And then what I do is I have them at the end, once the poem is written, have them switch the addressee. So if you've written to the president, now you have to switch it to being to your mother. But you can't change anything else. So what surfaces in this is it shows, I can actually talk to my mom about what I'm thinking about police brutality. Oh, I can actually talk to the president about my future or how I relate to people, because he's actually a person who is a father and a husband and blah, blah, blah. And that's actually, if anything, one thing, you can hate Obama all you want, but one thing he has done is really humanize the presidential role in a way that I don't think any other president has to date yet. Did anybody of you see his recent talk at the press media dinner where he had an anger interpreter? It was great. Look that up later if you haven't. Anyway, so this surfaces the idea, this collapses this dichotomy, this dualism of public versus private, women versus men, that we all care about these issues. Women don't have to go to the kitchen and gossip about, police brutality. We should be allowed to talk to everybody about it. But we're conditioned to these roles in a way that we think we have to adhere to them, or else we're going to look weird and be weirdos. Wrapping up a little bit, I was asked recently, just to throw in the WNBA award, I was asked recently why these types of awards are important for women. So I'll give you my quick answer. I think so much of the work women do often feels unrecognized anyway, especially in terms of social justice. And we simply do it because it's the right thing to do and is necessary work without expectation of recognition. I mean, we should be doing a lot of work because it's the right thing to do, not because we're going to get some pat on the back or whatever. But nonetheless, notable awards, generally speaking, seem to be reserved for achievements focused on big advancements as related to a capitalist mode of thinking and related to the production of goods or scientific achievements. And on the flip side, require undermining and even destroying what's typically considered the feminine. I'm thinking especially right now of the men of the Manhattan Project, which has created the atomic bomb, like Richard Feynman, who did the math, who's a brilliant man, and then spent the following decade after Hiroshima depressed, just losing his family and everything, for a good 10 years or so, over contributing to the source of destruction of human life. Closer to home, it's not difficult in the literary world to see the upper ranks of awards like Lifetime Achievement Awards still go to mostly men. Just look at a list, start looking at lists of things. Look at this best of list. Look at this list of who should be read. And start counting how many men on there versus women. How many people of color versus white people. And you start seeing these ideas are really very easy to see once you just take a look. It also mirrors the glass ceilings in the business world's upper management positions, the CEOs. And the political world's mostly male senators. You know, we still haven't had a female president. Have other countries had female presidents? Yes, many countries have. The Chancellor of Germany is a woman right now. You've got, there's a country in Africa where this woman has been president forever. I mean, just a lot. Nigeria. Liberia, that's right. Argentina, yes. So actually, when we say we're the greatest country, we're full of shit. We are way behind in so many ways, including egalitarian thinking about women. You know, we put these men in place, and I mean, even right now, look at this. I put a challenge up on Facebook, just saying, let's see how whether you like Hillary's track record or not. I should even say Clinton. I'm even calling her Hillary. Whether you like Clinton's track record or not, look at how people are starting to talk about her. Can they possibly talk about the politician's track record and potential without talking about her appearance, without mocking her? I mean, even when Bill Clinton got elected, one of the first heavy criticisms she took while she was working on health care for everyone was she didn't make some goddamn cookies for something that the first lady was. She didn't do the domestic symbolism thing, and she had to apologize for this or whatever. She made some cookies later. It was just unreal, you know? This focus on women must fulfill the domestic. Women must be everyone's mommy and girlfriend, and if you're not, you're Eve or you're something else nasty. A witch. Today I got called a snake bitch. My students asked me in class the other day, how do you deal with that stuff? It was Wagner, right? You were asking me. Are you texting? You better not be. How do you deal with it? How do you do? I'm just like, it just starts to roll off. You just look at it as a badge of honor at a certain point. I'm a snake bitch. The snake got a raw deal. I mean, he brought knowledge, you know? Eve accepted it. It was Adam who was the wimp. He just wanted to live in La La Land forever. Anyway, I'm happy to be a snake bitch. Hey, Florence. All right. So anyway, that's why it's important for women to get things like this, these kind of awards, because you know, it's a plus in ways that we don't expect, and it's been very encouraging. It's been very encouraging to me to get this award. It's something I never would have expected. I thought, I'm kind of like you guys. I just do stuff. I just go along and I try to make the right choices, and I try to work for some greater good in the world. I don't feel like I've done any superstar thing. I haven't jumped on the railway tracks to save a kid. I haven't, you know, written the great American novel. You know, I just do my daily stuff as best as I can. And I try to be aware of the choices that I make. And I try to help other people while making sure that I stay healthy too. If I'm not healthy, I can't help other people. But I don't want to be completely self-serving in the world. I don't want to just serve myself. And if you kind of keep that in mind as you make your choices in the world and go along, then you might find you get an award too. And that award might not be from, you know, a big organization, but it might be from, you know, just seeing the outcome of what your actions have done. And I always encourage my students, try to just volunteer. If you don't know what to do, you don't have money, you know, just try to spend an hour a month, 2 hours a month volunteering somewhere for some group that you empathize with, whether it's at a shelter, walking some dogs that live in a, you know, rescue place, going to a nursing home. These things are very feasible and possible. There are a lot of people who would greatly appreciate your help. And these are choices that really pay off. There's a great saying by the elected president of Burma, what's her name, Aung San, I can never remember her name, even though I use this statement all the time. The saying is, when you feel helpless, help someone. Because it takes the focus off of yourself, you know, wallowing in your own woes. And when you help someone, you feel like you've done something worthwhile in the world. So anyway, to sum up, we as Americans are very privileged to be able to consider the inner struggle over doing what's good for ourselves, or even self-serving, versus doing what's good for others. That is actually a privilege to think about. Do I want to make a lot of money and just serve myself? You know, I worked on Madison Avenue for a while. I could have just stayed there for a stock trader, using my wonderful analytical abilities that the NSA wanted, and made a lot of money and just served myself. But it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like that's the way to go for me. And I know that sounds very cheesy and romantic, but I feel like I'm happy with myself for the choices that I've made. Being an educator, interacting with so many awesome people, trying to influence you in positive ways. Those things have made me feel like I feel like I can sleep at night. So anyway, can we strike a balance? Does it have to be a choice? Can we do both? Can we help ourselves and keep ourselves healthy and help others? I think so. So anyway, I've learned that to make the right choices, though, to reiterate story and social justice, we need to be able to learn how to, it doesn't happen instantly. We need to learn how to be able to see the humanity in other people. And there's a recent poem that just came out that I really think speaks to that, related to Michael Brown, who is dead now. Why do I need to see the humanity in him? It's a poem by a poet named Ross Gay. It's called A Small Needful Fact. I'm sorry, it wasn't Michael Brown, it's about Eric Garner. A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means, perhaps, that with his very large hands, perhaps in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe. And that's by Ross Gay. So thanks everybody for coming out. If any of you have any questions for me, or